Are you getting ready to retire? Maybe you got 5 years or less. It's pretty exciting stuff, but you got to be prepared for this. You don't want to just jump right into retirement. You want to pre-plan your retirement. So if you got 5 years, 6 years or less, somewhere close, we're going to talk about what you should be thinking about. And I say we, there's my co-host, Tony Shore. Tony, welcome to the show. We're talking about getting ready to pull the parachute and jump out, glide to a successful retirement. What do you say?
I wish I was 5 years or less away. No, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. I need this job to keep me going. That's for sure. I'm at least 10 to 15 years away from retirement, probably. So,
well, ideally, I start working with clients about 10 years away from retirement. That's like a good, because it gives me enough time to start doing some slow changes. Like, if you were driving a cruise ship, you can't just make a hard right. You got to turn slightly. But they say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. But the second best time is today. So we're going to talk about, all right, Dan, I know 10 years would have been great, but I only got 3 years. I got 3 years to go. So what are we going to do? Let's talk about what I recommend are the key points you should be thinking about as you get closer and closer to retirement. If you start doing this before, 5 years in, before you retire, you're going to be in a much better spot. And the first one is you have to create a retirement income plan. A lot of people wait until they are retired to figure out, all right, where am I going to pull money from? That's the wrong strategy. You need to figure out exactly where your money is going to come from in retirement, from which buckets, which accounts, and when, and how much. So you need to figure out how much you need, but at the same time, where and when the timing is. In year one, where's the money going to come from? In year two, where's the money going to come from? Very specific. And you don't have to get really bogged down in the minutia, but you need to know what this means. And so retirement income planning is my main service, my main goal of what I help people with. And obviously, Social Security is a big part of that. Social Security is the foundation for that. So you need the Social Security strategy. I'll put the link to all the videos we do on Social Security. Tony, I would say we probably do 30 to 40% of everything we talk about is focused on Social Security. And then the other 60, we mentioned Social Security in some way, right?
Well, because it's the foundation. I mean, it's the whole reason people are saving and have investments is so they'll have money once they stop working to enjoy a comfortable retirement and make sure it lasts as long as they do. But if you maximize your Social Security, and I know you have a report you can run for our listeners and viewers out there, if they set up that consultation with you, you can run the report that takes into their personal information, and it shows them, hey, here's a sweet spot based on your personal information. Here's probably when you should take it. And so Social Security is important.
Yeah, it is. And it's the foundation of retirement income planning. Yeah. For a lot of people, it's their only retirement income. For everyone else, it's usually a good portion of it. And if you don't even need Social Security to retire, then you don't need to really overthink it. But I'm close. I don't know how I'm going to create a little map, but I think I'm getting closer and closer to sending out a Social Security maximization report to people, and I don't charge for it, to people in all 50 states. There are a few that I don't know if I'll ever do, but the hope is that people contact me from other states and I can check that little box. But
now there's some states you say you'll never do. Is that because you don't like those states? I mean, it's a personal preference for you?
Yeah, a good qualifying question, Tony. You got me there. No, it's because I don't think there's enough people that are watching the show in there.
Yeah.
I'd like to be surprised. I'd like to be
I'm
surprised.
Like, wow, why diss on those states? Like, there's 3 states I'm never going to talk to. It's the way that came across. It's like, wow.
Yeah, right. But I will say a majority are in Florida, which is currently the best state to live in my opinion. Okay, so
right.
The second thing you need to be thinking about is health insurance. Now, I can't. We've done a lot of shows on health insurance. I'll put them up here. The key here is that you got to understand. Surprisingly to me, even when I meet people over and over, this still happens, and I still get surprised by it. The big unknown and fear that people have is, what am I going to do about health insurance? They can have a couple of million in the bank, under a pillow, in the stock market, whatever. And they're not as concerned about that as they are as to, well, how am I going to get health insurance? Because my employer always covered me. So if you got 5 years or less, this is when you need to start thinking about, what age am I going to retire? Will I have Medicare? If so, what are my options? Will I not have Medicare? Am I too young? What are my options? And I don't want you to make the retirement decision based on the healthcare. You should make your retirement decision based on the big picture. Healthcare, we find a solution, we find a way. So big thing. So not only Medicare, but also the Affordable Care Act for those under 65.
Sure.
You know that people stick around for retirement, don't retire early as they want because of healthcare. You know that, Tony, right?
Yep. My neighbor Tom did that. He had to stay working because he had great healthcare he worked for the government. He worked for the state, and he had a great healthcare plan, but his wife was much younger. So he worked until he was 70 because she was not yet 65, and they wanted that healthcare cost because he calculated, hey, even if I'm on Medicare, for us to pay for her health care, and she had health issues, it would have been very expensive. So,
and sometimes it works that way, but for the most part, you could find a solution to allow you to retire.
Probably, if he had planned ahead, there were solutions, and he realized that, but they didn't, right? So, but you got to, like you said, within 5, if you're 5 years out, that's a good time to make sure by then you've have a plan for healthcare in retirement.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big part, and it alleviates a lot of stress that most people feel. And it's all about stress reduction, in my opinion. Third thing you got to think about is your saving strategy at work. A lot of people say, when I'm getting closer to retirement, that's when I just max out my 401k. But maybe that's not the best strategy. Maybe there's a reason why you should pull back from doing the 401k match, the 401k contribution. Maybe you might do a 401k Roth, or maybe you just take that money and put it in your paycheck, pay the taxes, and throw it in your checking account because you need some liquid cash, non-IRA money, non-401k money, to get through a gap of Medicare or health insurance, keeping your income low, not having taxes, a big tax bomb. So you should be thinking about how much you contribute to the 401k. But for the most part, it's, let's slam as much as I can into savings because I only got 5 years left or less. Sometimes that's the case, but maybe not always. The other factor here, when you're looking at how much you're saving, it also can give you an idea of how much you're spending. So you can look at your take-home pay and use that as a baseline for what you'll need in retirement.
Yeah, that's smart. Obviously, and there are catch-up contributions that you can make. Once you're over 50, so that I would assume that's a big part of what you can do within that 5 years of retirement.
That's right. And the government just passed some new rules that increase those catch-up contributions. So yeah, this is something to be aware of, and you should be looking at it. But this is, a lot of people do this, but they don't really focus on it that much. They just say, I'm just going to add more. Why are you adding more, and to which account? So that's important to know. Along those same lines, the next thing you want to think about is a tax plan. Do you put into the Roth 401k or the regular 401k? Do you do a Roth conversion? And if so, do you do it right after you retire? Because what's happening is, when you retire, theoretically, your income's going to drop. Do you turn on Social Security right away? Well, you should know whether or not you're going to turn on Social Security right away. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're going to delay Social Security and you're going to retire. And there's this, a lot of people assume retirement means you take Social Security. It doesn't have to be that way. Many people assume retirement means you're going to be on Medicare. It doesn't have to be that way. You can retire, not turn on Social Security, not take Medicare. So what do? Well, that's kind of, that's scary. You have a plan. So once you know the plan, you can then say, well, if my income goes from $50,000 a year to zero, maybe I should be doing a Roth conversion. Or, well, maybe I should take a little bit out to get enough income to get a health care subsidy so that I'm not paying anything for health insurance. Maybe the tax brackets are going to change because the Trump tax cuts are going to expire and nothing new is going to come up. Maybe when I retire that first year, I sell a bunch of stock and take capital gains and not pay any capital gains tax. We did a show on capital gains tax and how you can pay zero on it. What? How does that? Well, it all depends on your income. And when you retire, your income's going to go down, so you could play some games. You could do some tax things. This is early retirement is really a good time to start tax planning. Obviously, same as planting a tree 20 years ago. You know, how many times have I met people who are 60 who said, I wish I put all my money in a Roth when I was in my 40s instead of a traditional IRA. You know, but for
if
those
only I had done this, or if only I'd
Mhm.
started this sooner. And Dan,
What is your tax plan?
that's the question,
What
right?
What is it? Do you have one? Probably not. Most people take their lump of papers and they drop it on the CPA's desk and say, go for it. If they're not having a discussion about, hey, I'm retiring in 5 years. Should I be doing anything tax-wise differently? I just retired. What should I? It's such, because that's going to be another regret. I'm 70. I've been retired for 5 years. I wish I would have done XYZ when I was 65, because now RMDs are coming and so on.
Yeah, and maybe we have listeners who do have or do some thinking about or planning for taxes this year or taxes even next year. Doing things before the end of the year that might affect this past year's taxes or next year's taxes. But I think very few, if any, people who aren't working with somebody like yourself are actually creating a tax plan for retirement. They're not thinking 5 years ahead to retirement. How are my taxes going to be affected in retirement by what I'm doing? And what can I do before the end of this year to help my taxes when I'm retired to pay less, or to minimize that tax burden for myself or my loved ones who might inherit? So, yeah, I think that's creating a tax plan for retirement is huge.
Yeah. And if you're going to retire soon, you got to do it now. So that, again, there's no surprises. You don't want to be retired and be like, oh, I wish I would have. Right. So the next one, and this is usually the biggest one people think about, this gets the most play in the press and so on. It's, you got to reduce your risk on money in your retirement. Oh, as you get older, you reduce risk. Not necessarily, but you should adjust your investment holdings now for money that you're going to need in 3 years or 5 years, because you don't want to be the person that retires in 2008 when everything's rosy, and then as soon as you retire 3 months in, the market crashes, and then you're like, oh, wait a second.
All my money is in an IRA or 401k that's it's all in the stock market, and it just went down by 30, 40, 50%. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 5 years is a really good. So let's imagine you're retiring in 5 years, Tony. You said to me, I need $50,000 to retire in addition to Social Security or something like that. Okay, you need $50,000 in 5 years? Well, if we keep it in the market, we should be fine. We should be higher in 5 years in the stock market. So just keep it there, and then we'll pull it out then. That makes sense on paper, right? Oh, the market's going to be 5 years. But what if it doesn't? Or let's say it's 3 years. What then? And then the market tanks. Or let's say you're just about to, and then the market tanks, and you're like, and you get this emotional, like, I can't sell now. I was just 30% higher 2 days ago. So what you do is you say, I need money, 50,000 in 5 years. Why not take 30,000 right now and put it aside in an account that'll grow to 50,000 or close to it by the time you need it, and then it's ready. It's cash. Doesn't matter what the stock market does. Doesn't matter who the president is. Doesn't matter what happens with wars. You got this money set aside so that when you do retire, it's right there. Then the rest of the money you can let ride for. And that's leading to my last and final point, which is, don't forget about the long term. You're retiring in 5 years. You're not going to die in 5 years.
Right.
You don't want to.
It's a new beginning, not an end.
Right. You don't want to put all your money in the CD so that, you can't lose anything, because what's going to happen 15 years from now? You're going to need money. Wouldn't it be good to have that riding in the market for 15 years? You could ride the wave then. So you don't want to put all your eggs in the fixed basket right away. You want to stagger this stuff, ladder them, bucketize it, whatever you want to call it. Bucketize. There's a new word for you. Bucketize.
Bucketize. I like that. Did you come up with that all by yourself, Dan? Or
right.
Did Mrs. Financial Professional help you with that?
Should say it. I say bucketize. So really, you don't want to assume that as you get older, you got to put all your money in safety. In fact, we did a podcast on this. Retirees need more risk as they get older. It's the glide path of retirement that, ironically, or against traditional wisdom, is you actually have more risk as you get older. What? How does that work? It's all because of income planning. So again, this is a perfect time to do it. Right now, you watching this video, start now. Well, I'm 8 years away. So do it now. Start thinking about it, because you want to train your mind into what it means to retire, because you're going from save, accumulation to the decumulation, to spending. It's a huge switch. It's a behavioral shock to your system. And if you don't plan for it, it'll feel like a punch to the face. But if you plan for it, you'll be like, yeah, that's right. We talked about this. The market's just down 15% this month, and I'm supposed to retire this month. That's okay. Because remember, 3 years ago, we put the money over there, and that's what we're going to use. So I still, it's so much easier if you plan ahead. So that's the big message, as always, I guess. Plan ahead. Plant the tree.
Yep.
Plant the tree.
Do it now.
I planted some trees when I moved into my house, and it's been, I guess, 10 years now. My latest home, and they're growing up. My recommendation, if you and they're slow growing trees, so they're grown up. They're not huge, but I do have some banana trees and some papaya trees that I planted a couple of years ago. Those are crazy. So, you can say, all right, I got 3 years. Let me plant a banana tree, because in 3 years, I'll look like a forest. You be thoughtful about this. You got to think through the different stages of your retirement, not just I'm retiring and then that's it. You got to say, what's the first couple of years look like? Second 3, so on. That's the only way to do that, Tony, is to think ahead. You can shoot from the hip, which is what a lot of people do. They come to me and say, hey, I just retired. What do I do?
Yeah.
It makes my job a whole lot harder, but I don't berate them. I just say, join the Dolphin way and we'll figure it out together.
Yeah. You're a problem solver, Dan.
Tony? When are you retiring? How many years?
I don't know.
You're not going to retire.
As long as my voice holds out.
You're not going to retire.
Yeah. Not before. Right. I mean, my minimum target date would be 67. But I'm hoping to not retire for a long time.
All right. So you got another 30 years. Okay. On that note, Tony looks a lot younger than he is. Don't be fooled, people. I'm actually younger than Tony. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks, Tony.
All matters discussed in today's show are for informational purposes only.
This show is not investment advice.
Dan Riddle nor Dolphin Financial Group are affiliated or endorsed by any government agency.
Investment advisory services are offered through Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc., a registered investment advisor in the state of Florida.
Insurance products and services are offered through Dolphin Insurance, Inc.
Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc. and Dolphin Insurance, Inc. are affiliated companies doing businesses as Dolphin Financial Group.
You should talk to someone at Dolphin Financial Group before implementing any of these strategies or ideas.